Hello everyone, good evening and welcome to part number 4, which is the final part of our series of our talks about the roles of the unconscious mind, which in the field of neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, we call the prime directives of the unconscious mind. So I began this series a week ago discussing some misconceptions that people have about hypnosis and looking to dispel them and to show instead the benefits that hypnosis holds if you learn how to do it properly and if you learn how to use it in order to connect with your unconscious mind for the sake of better learning, behavioral change, and installing long-term positive habits so that you get long-term lasting beneficial results. And how actually the proper understanding, hello Joanna, welcome. The proper understanding of how our unconscious mind works is key to faring well in life, basically. So we talked about, and I'm just going to quickly readdress them, recount them. We talked about how the unconscious mind is in charge of storing all of our memories, how it is the field of emotions, how it organizes memories according to the timeline and the mechanics of the Gestalt, how it represses negatively charged memories, so memories with negative emotions, in order to protect us, but then how it also presents us with those memories and with the emotions when we can learn from them, and so the unconscious mind can let the emotions go. The unconscious mind is in charge of all bodily functions. It takes care of the body, and it holds a map of our health and the perfect functioning of the body, schematics for it. It also has moral integrity, so all our values, what we hold as proper behavior, is stored at an unconscious level. And even if one were to go into trance now, they would still behave according to what they consider as morally acceptable. So they wouldn't do anything that they wouldn't otherwise do even in their waking state. Another thing, the unconscious mind is extremely serviable. So it will seek to give you whatever you command of it, as long as you're really, really precise. But, whatever you get, it's what you've asked for. You just have to fine-tune what you demand of it and make sure that your beliefs, your values, and your emotions actually support your unconscious mind into getting it. Another thing the unconscious mind does is it controls, it administers all of perceptions, it generates, it stores and distributes energy throughout the body. It supports your instincts, and it creates habits through repetition in time. And it also is programmed to always look for more. Very importantly, the unconscious mind works as an integrated whole. So rather than developing parts, developing broken pieces, fragments of the unconscious mind to put into play, to put into action in different circumstances, the question is, what would it take to get both A and B and C and D all at once together at an unconscious level through your behaviors, through flexible behaviors applied contextually, so that the mind works as a whole, and so that you actually get both the desired outcomes, or all of the desired outcomes put together. Now, for the final pieces of this talk and for the final prime directives of the unconscious mind, it's symbolic. So the unconscious mind responds to symbols and it uses symbols. And I think I mentioned in one of our previous installments about the mathematician Kekulé, when he was looking for the solution to the structure of the molecule for benzene. And that organic molecule just didn't fit anything chemistry had taken into consideration before. And so he plugged at it and plugged at it and plugged at it, and at one point he just set it to rest and, had a good night's sleep. And in his sleep, he says that he dreamt of a snake biting its own tail, which is the symbol of the Ouroboros in the Western world, but not only in the Western world. Throughout ancient cultures, it is the symbol of the cyclic nature of time. And Kekulé interpreted that dream as an answer to what he was looking for. So his unconscious mind pieced together, hello Maria Elena, welcome. His unconscious mind pieced together disparate information and connected it and delivered to him this insight. Hello Otilia, welcome. Delivered to him this insight in the form of a symbol. So he was able to figure out that the molecule for benzene actually is shaped as a hexagon. And creative people, hello Ariadna, welcome. Creative people all over the world have this experience. And hello Alina as well. Have this experience of working very hard consciously towards a specific goal, and then all of a sudden having a flash, a snap of inspiration in which everything comes together. So I actually had a similar experience myself when I came up with the name Mindgrasp. So I wrote down countless pages of names for the company, and none of them just really sounded right. None of them really captured what I wanted. And at one point, I think I had a very satisfying afternoon nap. And when I awoke and stretched, the name Mindgrasp just popped into my mind, and I said, wow, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I wrote to a friend who does PR and marketing, and I asked her, well, what do you think about this one? And I had asked her about all the other options before, and she's very blunt in her feedback, and she said, no. This doesn't work, no. But this time, when I said Mindgrasp, she texted me back and said, yes, with capital letters and 3 exclamation marks, and it was brilliant. And I knew that was it. I finally had it. So the unconscious mind pieced it all together and delivered the answer to me. And that's how, and this is another one of the roles of the unconscious mind. It makes associations. It connects ideas and things that are similar, even though consciously we might not directly see the similarities. The key to the process is to have a good communication with the unconscious mind and to trust the intuitions that it delivers to us. But then, obviously, if we are to translate those symbols and associations and those gut feelings and hunches into concrete action, we have to chunk them down. We have to dig into the specifics of it, which is very much the job of our conscious mind. And so I would encourage you, and because some people going into personal development go to the extreme of only leaving everything in charge of their unconscious mind, which is not exactly how it's supposed to happen. When you're sailing your ship across the sea, you want to have a steady hand at the helm, and you want to take charge of the navigation tools, of the maps and the compass, the GPS nowadays. And so you want to know where you are constantly, to measure that with respect in relation to your goal, and carefully steer your ship. And the ship will get you there, perhaps by a path that might surprise you, but it's important to really pay attention to the concrete details, which is, as I mentioned before, the job of the conscious mind. Now, another thing the unconscious mind does, and another one of its prime directives, is that it takes everything personally. And I've sort of addressed this before. Basically, whatever you say either about yourself or to yourself, or anything you say about somebody else, your unconscious mind takes that as though you've said it about yourself, and you've given that as a direction to it. And so if you were to say, let's say you've had a really hard day, long day at work, and you've done lots of things, and you feel like your energy levels are pretty low. If you say, I'm just pooped, or I'm just completely finished. Well, your unconscious mind will take that as a definitive statement about your identity and who you are, and will seek to actualize it, because as I've mentioned before, the unconscious mind is highly serviable. But would you really want to permanently manifest in your life this notion of being finished or done with or pooped? I think not. And so be very careful about what you say to describe yourself or to describe others, because for your unconscious mind, that's actually a command. And so you might say something like, well, I'm feeling tired or exhausted or whatnot. And then immediately, ask yourself, okay, what can I do to get my energy levels back up? Maybe I do some breathing work, breath work. Maybe I do something fun for me, like move around outside, walk around barefoot in the grass. This is something I've recently discovered really works for me, to my surprise. But I will get to that in a future video. Or, I don't know, meet up with some friends if that's how you recharge. Read a book or listen to some music in solitude, etc. But, be just very, very careful about what exactly you say to yourself and how exactly you talk about others. Your unconscious mind will interpret that as though you're saying it about yourself, and you're giving it the command to make that happen. And this is actually also the basis for how perception is projection. We don't see the world as it is. We don't perceive the world as it is. We perceive the world as we are. And in describing the world in a certain way, in synthesizing our experience of the world in certain words, it's like we're pouring our sensory experience into a mold, and that mold might turn into sort of a straitjacket through which we further experience the world, and so on, to the point that our experience might get completely limited in relationship to everything that's out there in the world. So we perceive the world as we are, not as it is, just because, I've mentioned the massive amount of information that reaches our nervous system second by second, those 10 to 12, or some would say even 20 million bits per second, and how, our conscious awareness can only process 134. So that's as much as we see. But my 134 bits are different from yours, are different from, some other person out there. They're different. Every person's 134 bits per second are different. And so it's almost as if literally we're inhabiting different film universes. We have different films of the reality in front of us running in our minds. And that's why our behaviors differ. That's why, we might feel sometimes even as far as shocked as to why would other people behave the way they do? Why would they make something important the way they do? Well, they just have different filters, and they have different things that are getting their nervous system excited and setting their bodies and their behaviors into action, into motion. So, takeaway, once again, be very mindful of what you're saying about the world and about yourself and about others. Your unconscious mind will seek to reproduce that. At the same time, you can just pay attention to what your natural language about yourself might be, because that might just be an indication of unconscious limiting beliefs that you hold about yourself. And so you can write it down and see what the common threads in all of them is. If you realize, well, these aren't exactly the kind of things I would like to say to myself about myself. Now, another thing the unconscious mind does, and this actually is connected to what I've been saying, it does not process negations. So, or better yet said, more precisely said, it doesn't process negations directly. So if I were to tell you right now the classical, don't think of a pink elephant, you would have to think of a pink elephant first in order to then know what you're supposed to not think about. Think about that. Because you can't think of what is else other than, what I just mentioned, a pink elephant, without first taking that into consideration and creating an image in your mind of said pink elephant. So if you say something negative to yourself, well, the unconscious mind will only remember the object of the negation. And you can see it very well with little kids, because especially up until the age of 7, we don't really have a conscious filter to process, to filter out what goes towards the unconscious mind. We just soak in absolutely everything, all the stimuli from our surrounding environment. And so if you tell them, hey, don't run into the street, the kid will say, oh, what a great idea, I didn't even think about it, and they run off into the street. Or say, oh, don't touch the flaming stove. It's like, oh, I didn't even consider that. And they go, boop, put their hand on the stove. So that's where you can see this process in action most closely. But it works just the same way with adults. It's just that the results are delayed because we also have our conscious filters in play. And so be very mindful of all the negations that you say, and it would be much easier instead to just directly say things the way you want them. So instead of, don't be mad, say how you'd like that person to act out instead. Be patient, or be kind, be empathetic. Or instead of, don't do that, well, tell that person, or tell yourself, what exactly do you want to do instead, very specifically. And you will see your results skyrocket. And this is, but the corollary of this, and it's really interesting. It's something I talk about more at length in the communication sections of my courses. So when we talk about conscious, deliberate communication, taking conscious control of the processes of the unconscious mind and how we make sense of things and how we turn that sense into actions, into behaviors, and then into results, you can deliberately use the don't think of a pink elephant principle in order to, subtly transmit ideas that otherwise might seem a bit too blunt, maybe, or that might, not come across so smoothly. So, for instance, let's say you're at work and you're working with your training people, or you're delegating some tasks to people who are your subordinates. So you can tell them stuff like, well, I don't want you to think this is not so much an easy task. It's not easy, and I'm not saying it's that simple. And at the same time, it's something I'm sure you can learn. So just notice, you don't say the words difficult or complicated at any given time. You just say, not easy, not simple. And so their unconscious mind remembers easy, simple. And whatever the content of that task will be, that framework will mold their experience of the task, because, as I mentioned before, perception is projection. And so they will project onto the task the expectation of it to be easy and of it to be simple, although you've placed the not in front of them. So you've told them the truth about it, and at the same time you've carefully influenced and shaped their perception into taking a more constructive approach of that respective task. And now, I'm not saying you can do that with yourself as well, spot the elephant. And I'm not saying you can begin to apply it, even as soon as you finish watching or listening to the video. And I'm not saying it can work for you brilliantly. All I'm saying is that I'm looking forward to hear of your results and for you to share them with the group and the class. So that concludes our talk for today, and that concludes our discussion of the roles of the unconscious mind. I'm looking forward, as I mentioned before, to hear how you've been how you've been putting it all together, and how you've been applying yourselves so that you get the best results, putting into action everything that we've talked about until now. So what I will be doing further on, we started from hypnosis, and then we talked about the roles of the conscious and the unconscious mind working together, delved more deeply into the roles of the unconscious mind. What we'll continue to do in the further future videos will be to explore a bit more in depth some of these prime directives of the unconscious mind. For instance, that it works best as an integrated whole, and relating them to everyday experiences, so current hot topic events. Oh, hello, Katerina, welcome. Current hot topic events that are happening all around us. Because after all, I think the best way to get value from all of this knowledge is to make it work for you and to help you process, to see through the flow, the ebb and flow, and the constant, chatter, mind chatter of everyday reality, and the constant flow of news around us, which sometimes might, talk about doesn't process negations, might not focus on the best things that you'd want your unconscious mind to remember and then actualize into behaviors and results. And for me, that's my number one value in everything that I do, both in my business, my personal life, family life in general. It's wisdom in the sense of taking a piece of information, taking facts and information, and then transferring them into meaningful behaviors and systematic behaviors that help me get around and thrive in my life. And that's what I wish you as well. And that's my purpose for delivering these talks to you. So until next time, I'm yours truly, Adrian Montano, trainer and excellence coach at Mindgrasp. It has been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to have you again at our future Mindgrasp Facebook Live talks.